Hey guys, I'm so happy to be here with you. I wish I could be with you in Hagerstown. It was our plan to be there this week with you for spring break. I believe that your spring break has already passed, but for us in Michigan, the plan was to come out to Hagerstown, Maryland, and spend a week with you at the church and at the school in some ministry work and enjoying the area, visiting DC and Antietam and Gettysburg and doing some stuff on the Appalachian Trail, probably doing some shopping and some eating and visiting with friends as well. We wish we could be there, but obviously at this time that our nation and the global economy is where it's at, the global community is where it's at, we just couldn't do that. So I want to thank you for being here today. And I understand that this is a time of high anxiety and high stress. I'm feeling it just like everybody else is feeling it. And I want you to think about something. When was a time you've experienced high stress, high anxiety? Maybe it is right now. Maybe it's sometime in your past. Maybe you had some difficult decisions you had to work through. Maybe you had to answer for some consequences in your life, but you brought out some huge anxiety and stress in your life. What was that? I want you to go back to that time. What were you feeling? What were you thinking at the time? I remember a time just a few years ago, I had the same stress. I was sitting in a coffee shop here in town, and it was tough. I was having a bagel, drinking a cup of coffee, and I was crying because I realized I had a tough decision. I had to say goodbye to nearly 20 years of pastoring, and I wasn't sure what the future was going to look like. There was intense emotions going on. There's fear and anxiety about the future. And I kind of felt paralyzed. What do I do? And in that moment, I started thinking, okay, what do I need to do? I made a couple phone calls. I met with a couple friends. I talked about some really tough things in my life, some fears, some dreams. And then in the course of 24 hours, I went from confusion and anxiety and in fear. And in 24 hours, I moved to determined confidence, where I walked into a board meeting, I read a resignation letter, and I launched my own business. I was scared to death. I still didn't have all the answers. I still don't have all the answers. But I had a confidence. And so today, what I want to talk to you as we take this walk to Calvary that Pastor Wyan has been sharing with us, and some of the other pastors there at Broadfording has been sharing with us, I want to take us through the walk to Calvary as it relates to extreme anxiety, because our Savior Jesus Christ experienced that as well. So would you open up your Bible to Mark chapter 14, and we're going to be looking at verses 32 to 42. This morning, I'm going to be reading out of the New Living Translation. Please read whatever translation you prefer, but I'll be looking at the New Living Translation. So follow along as I read this. Mark 14, 32 to 42. They, Jesus and the disciples, went to the olive grove called Gethsemane. And Jesus said, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, listen to this, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Did you hear what Jesus said? Stay here. Be with me in this time. He said, my soul is crushed. He's sharing his deep emotions with them. He went on a little further and fell to the ground, and he prayed that if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass by him. "Abba, Father," he cried out, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done, not mine. Verse 37. Then he returned and found the disciples asleep. He said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch, pray. Listen to this. So that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Then Jesus left them again and prayed the same prayer as before. When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't know what to say. They're speechless. When he returned to them the third time, he said, Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But no, the time is come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Verse 42. Up. Let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here. In your notes, I want to give you a little bit of a walking commentary on what is happening here. And then we're going to give you a couple points on what to do. What are some three truths that you need to keep in mind while you're in the midst of anxiety and high stress, high pressure. And then I'm going to give you, in closing, some skills to learn. But first, let's look at what is called a walking commentary through the passage. Now, the passage starts with Jesus and his apostles moving down into what is called Gethsemane. It's an olive grove area, and Gethsemane specifically means olive press. This past November, I had the opportunity to be in Israel, and we were in this exact location where Jesus is spending this time with his Father and with his apostles. It's a beautiful park setting. There's an olive grove. Actually, in this area, there's some cemeteries now because the different religions of the world, whether it's Catholic or Christians or even the Jewish religion, they want to be close to this area and very close to the Temple Mount. And that's where we're at. We're very close to the Temple Mount. We're very close to where the temple is located there in Jerusalem. It is probably a 15-minute walk. And it's only a 15-minute walk because at this location in Gethsemane, it's uphill. And so you have to go up to the Temple Mount, and it will take a little bit of time, but it's not that far of a distance. Like I said, it's a beautiful park setting. There is a olive press located right there. And that's very significant too in the story. There's some actual meaning there. When olives are pressed for oil, it goes through a process of 3 pressings. And during this time, the olives are put under intense pressure to get the oil out. So as Jesus is in this story, he says, my soul is being what? It's being crushed, just like an olive. He's using the same word pictures that the apostles would be able to see is happening at this location. This is a part of their commerce. This is a part of their livelihood. They know how this works. And so when he says, my soul is being crushed, even to the point of death, they can picture that. And then he prays 3 times, just like the owners of the olive press the olives 3 times. They press them. They put these big stones on top of baskets full of olives, and they press the olives for oil. And then they put another stone on and press the olives. And then they put a third stone on and they press the olives. That's what Jesus is going through. He's going through an olive press spiritually. He's praying to his Father. He's saying and pouring out his heart to his Father. And he wants his apostles to be there with him. Second thing that jumps out in the passage to me is the phrase, he prayed, if possible. If possible. Father, if possible, is there another way for us to solve this problem? If possible, he says. Now, for us in modern culture, in where we're at today, what might this look like? I don't know if you're familiar with this movie, but a couple of years ago, a movie came out called Infinity War. And in Infinity War, there's two characters who are kind of key to the story. Actually, three characters. You have a guy named Tony Stark, you have a guy named Doctor Strange, and you have another guy named Thanos. Thanos is the antagonist in the story, and he wants to destroy the universe, or at least 50% of it. Tony Stark and Doctor Strange want to save people. And Doctor Strange looks into the future to see all the different possibilities of how they could win this battle. And Tony Stark comes up to him and says, well, how many scenarios did you see? And it was like 14,605 different ways that this problem could be solved. And Tony Stark asks Doctor Strange, well, how many did we win? And Doctor Strange says one. He looks right in Tony Stark's eyes. Well, there's a second movie that came out. Small picture called Endgame. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But in the movie Endgame, there's this final battle. And if you ever see the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you. But in this final battle, picture the Garden of Gethsemane. And Tony Stark looks at Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange holds up one finger. And it's like Tony Stark is saying, is there any way that we're going to get out of this? And there's only one way. That's what Jesus is doing. He's like, if it's possible, is there another way? And God is like, this is the only way. You got to walk to Calvary. You got to go to Calvary. And Jesus is saying, if it be your will, I'll do it. I'll do it. He cries out again, Abba, Father, please take this suffering away. He realizes the weight of the world, the weight of mankind and sinfulness is going to be upon him in just a few short hours. And it's crushing his soul. The sinless man is going to take on the sin of mankind. He goes to his, he goes to his apostles, and he confronts them. He says, keep watch so that you will not give in to temptation. You see, Jesus, being God, he can look into the future and he can see what is going to happen with his apostles. He's going to see that they are going to come under temptation and anxiety and stress. They're going to do some things that they're not going to be proud of in the coming days. And you know what? The same thing can happen to us. And God is saying to us right now, watch and pray. Be with me during this time and pray with me. In just a little bit, I'm going to share with you the three things that you can do to work through this anxiety, to work through this stress, to work through this pressure of life. But let me share with you a couple things that might happen if we are not healthy. And when I say healthy, I don't mean necessarily physically healthy. I mean spiritually healthy, relationally healthy, and mentally and emotionally healthy. Here's what happens. We can go into what is called perfectionism. Perfectionism is a dysfunction of our mental health where we have this thought process, I want things right and I want it right now. It might look like this. A couple years ago, I came home from a mission trip from South Africa. My family picked me up from the airport and we drove home. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and as we pull into the garage of our house, I look on the wall where my pegboard is. And on the pegboard are a bunch of tools, and I look at my screwdrivers. I have them all lined up really nice. And I see a couple of my screwdrivers are missing. Now, this should be a happy time. This should be a wonderful time. I just get home from a mission trip, being away from the family for 2 weeks. But the first thing out of my mouth when we pull into the garage is, where are my screwdrivers? Why are they not in the right place? It kind of put a damper on the excitement of me being home. I go into the house. I open up the dishwasher, grab a cup out because it's clean. And I look down at the silverware, and the silverware is not stacked the way I think that needs to be stacked. There's forks and spoons all mixed together, getting cleaned together. And it's like, that doesn't work for me. I want my forks in one area. I want my spoons in one area. I want my knives in one area. And I want it right now. You see, what had happened was I moved into the area of my brain called perfectionism, obsessive compulsive for some of you. I want things right and I want it right now because I just got home from this stressful time of being in a foreign country, of leading a group, and I was tired. I was exhausted. I was anguished. My soul was being crushed. And I moved to perfectionism. And my family had to confront me because for the next 3 days, I was being very perfectionistic. And they had to confront me on it, lovingly and gently, it says in Galatians chapter 6. So I had to do some contemplating. I had to go back and get refreshed from my sources and get healthy again. How about you guys? Do you ever struggle with perfectionism? Another one would be called idealism. Idealism is where we interact with people and we go into what's called black and white thinking. Black and white thinking says, if you don't live by my rules and my ideals, then I'm going to punish you by being passive aggressive or just isolating myself from you because I can't have a relationship with you because you don't fit my ideal. This ideal thinking is very juvenile because it says that we got to have a list of rules to be able to live our life correctly. You see, Jesus confronted this idea. When he had these discourses earlier in the scriptures, you might remember them. He would say statements like this: "You have heard that it's been said, but I say to you." See, when he makes those statements, he's confronting black and white thinking. He's confronting the thinking of the Pharisees because Pharisees need rules to live their life. And God's saying you don't need rules to live your life, you need rules to guide your life. And so when you start getting into ideal thinking, that's a dangerous place because we got to live in the reality of life. And we use rules to guide us. We use rules to shape our life. But if we need rules in order to live our life, then we're not using our brains and our creativity. Creativity goes out the door when we have ideal thinking. A couple other things that happen in this time period of immense stress and pressure of life, of not being able to deal with the negative realities of life. We get into self-righteous behavior. We can become arrogant with our life. Here's another one, and this is a big one. We can start to suppress personal negative feelings. This is the individual, you call them up, you say, "Hey buddy, how you doing? It's really a sad time right now. I know you haven't been working for a couple of weeks. Are you nervous about the finances and about getting food on the table for the family?" "Oh, no, things are good. I'm good. Things are all good." Everything's always good with this individual. That person who can't share what their feelings are, they're suppressing it. If you suppress it, at some point it's going to come out. So look for those things in your life. Do you tend to just always be positive? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being a positive person. But if you're always positive and you're refusing to accept the fact that sometimes life stinks and we live in a broken world and we're broken people, and if you can't accept the fact that sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're mad, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're depressed, those are okay feelings. God has given us those feelings to help us get better. Now, if you suppress those, you're not getting better. You're actually becoming more unhealthy, more toxic. Here's a big one that pops up during this time of life. And so pastors at Broadfording, I want you to be aware of this because you are in touch with your church family. But this starts to pop up during times of extreme pressure and stress. Addictions. It might be food addictions to comfort us. It might be alcohol and drug addictions to pacify us, to kind of soothe the mental and emotional pain, relationship pain. It might be work addictions. It might be sexual addictions. And so start looking at what's underneath the surface. What's going on? Because at times of high stress, addictions start to go up. So be aware of that. And then finally, this is going to be an obvious one, but times of extreme stress and pressure, there's going to be depression as well, anxiety. There's going to be depression because of our own self-image, of our own self-worth, of our own self-value, narcissistic behaviors, feelings of guiltiness when it's not really substantiated. So those are some symptoms that are going to happen during this time. And Jesus is saying to his apostles, guys, this is time to pray and watch, to be together, because temptation's coming. These struggles are going to be coming into your life. And so please watch and pray. There's a statement from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I share this with a lot of my clients, not because they're alcoholics, just because this is a great statement for life. And I don't think it even originates with Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it originates with Ben Franklin. But it goes like this: a failure to plan is a plan to fail. Another way of saying is this: plan in times of strength for times of weakness. Now, some of you have applied that in your life. You've planned for times of strength for the times of weakness. And your bank account is okay. You have plenty of toilet paper in your cupboards, and you have lots of food. But there might be some areas in your life where you're empty. It might be in relationships. You got some things all figured out, but you have your relationships figured out. Maybe for some of you, you have deep relationships, and this emotional stuff is easy for you, but you're bankrupt. You don't know where the next meal is going to come from. You don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from because you haven't worked in a long time. And you're confused and you're concerned and you're scared. But you have your relationships, and that's good. Let me tell you something. The path to health, the path to healing, the path to life is always going to be through the path of relationships. So we got a plan in times of strength for times of weakness. We have to have a plan, because a failure to plan is a plan to fail. So that's what Jesus is telling his disciples with that. Keep watch and pray. Here's another thing that jumped out at me. He says that he found them sleeping. He found them asleep. So what does that mean? You know, the theologians of the scriptures kind of struggled with this topic here. He said, some say, well, he came across gently and softly to them. Guys, are you sleeping? You can't watch and pray once with me? Some say he came across sternly. What's going on with you guys? You can't watch and pray with me for just 1 hour? Shame on you. I'm not sure. We're not quite sure what the interaction was like. But I don't think it was too gracious. I don't think it was too truthful. I think it was right in the middle. I think he had a compassionate, hard conversation with his disciples at that moment. A couple months ago, I had some extreme stress and pressure in my life. And I reached out to one of my friends. He lives about 3 hours away from me, and I called him up, and he didn't answer the phone. I left a message that said, hey, I really need to talk to you. And he didn't return my call, which was kind of odd. So I called the next day, and he answered the next day. And he said, hey, I'm kind of busy right now. Can I give you a call back? I said, sure, no problem. Please call me back later today. I got to talk to you. Well, he didn't call the next day. And in fact, I didn't hear from him again for another 2 weeks. He finally came up to visit me because he had some business in my area. And so we went out for dinner and had a good time at dinner. And about halfway through dinner, I had to look at him. I said, hey, I'll call him Matt. I said, Matt, I got to say something tough to you right now. Is that okay? He goes, yeah, sure. I said, remember 3 weeks ago when I called you? I said, I need you to call me back. And you didn't call me back. And then I called you the next day and you answered and you said you were going to call me back. And then you never called me back. I looked at him eyeball to eyeball. I said, Matt, I really needed you. I was going through some tough things with my family, with my business, with my kids. I had stress coming at me from 3 angles, and I needed someone just to talk life over with. And you weren't there. And I said to him, I forgive you, but I really needed you in that time. Matt shared with me what was going on in his life, and he goes, really? There's no excuse. I dropped the ball. I'm sorry. He apologized. Later that night, he was on his way back home. He was driving back home. He called me back up. He said, Terry, thanks for Thanks for confronting me. I needed to hear that. And I'm really sorry that I wasn't there for you. I think that's the picture. I think that's the picture that Jesus is having with his apostles. I think he had to have that tough conversation. Guys, I love you, and I'm in stress right now. I'm in anxiety, and I need you right now. I think that's what's happening in this picture right here. It's a tough conversation to his apostles, and he's saying, I need you. Please watch and pray with me just for 1 hour. He comes back again a third time, and he sees them sleeping, and he says, you know what, guys, go ahead and sleep. At this point, I kind of feel like he's saying, you know what, temptation's just around the corner. You're going to deny me 3 times. You're going to run. You're going to chop off people's ears. Sometimes you got to learn the hard way. And even then, I'm going to be with you. Well, that's the walking commentary. Let's get into what are some truths that we can use to deal with anxiety. What are some truths? In your notes, number 1, communicate what you need. We see Jesus Christ do this. He says, he told them, my soul is crushed. This is verse 34. My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here, keep watch with me. Jesus Christ talks to his apostles. He says, I need you. I need you to keep watch with me because my soul is crushed. I'm very anxious right now. I'm scared. I'm fearful. I don't want to do something. I'm nervous about this. And he shares with his apostles exactly what he needs. This is just like me talking to my friend Matt saying, hey, this is what I needed. I needed you to be there with me in this time of stress in my life. So we need to be able to share with others what we need. It might be some physical needs. It might be some relationship needs. It might be some mental or emotional needs. Something I do with my clients is I stress them to have 2 types of teams in their life. It's people that they have on a regular basis. It's a life team of people that they can just go and talk to when time gets tough. And then what I call a tech team. A tech team are individuals who have information about life and how life works on a more specific level. For instance, maybe you have someone who's a financial team member because you stink at finances, or maybe with technology issues or relationship issues, but more of a specific thing. I have a tech team and a life team, people I can go to for different aspects of my life, and I reach out to them on a regular basis. This is what Jesus is doing right here. He's recruited his life team, and now he's going to his life team saying, I need you to go with me during this time because my soul is being crushed. So keep watch and pray. So that's truth 1. Communicate what you need to your life team and your tech team. Number 2, connect with God and others. It's similar to communicate, but now we're connecting at a deep level. He went on a little further and he fell to the ground and he prayed. In the passage we see that he prayed 3 times, and he came to his 3 closest friends 3 times. Watch and pray with me. Watch and pray with me. Watch and pray with me. He's not doing it in isolation. He's doing it with those 3 other apostles. Now, as we look at the world around us, I believe that God is calling the church for such a time as this. These are very unique times, but the timing of this epidemic in our country, globally, I think God is calling the church to do some great things. And it's not going to be in the buildings that we've been used to for years and years and years. It's going to be in relationship. It's going to be through virtual meetings. Something I've been doing just started this week is we are meeting virtually for small group. We are meeting virtually for Bible study. I send out a email or a text message to my small group It's a group of men that I meet with every Wednesday morning. And because of technology, we can meet in a virtual meeting room where we all see each other's faces. We all have our own cup of coffee that we brewed in our own kitchen. And we can meet and share God's word. And we can talk to each other and discuss with each other what's the ups and downs of life. What are the struggles we're facing? And how are we going to move forward in spite of the new reality we're living in? That's what Jesus is doing with his apostles, not in a virtual setting, but in a real setting right there in the garden. And we can do that. Here's another thing that we can do to connect with others. And maybe you haven't had this opportunity. You can connect with family members. For us, the Porters, this is something we've been doing for years, but now during this new season, we're going to do it at an even higher level. You see, for years, we've been doing a family dinner time. Every evening, not every evening, but nearly every evening, we sit together as a family and we eat a meal together and we talk. We talk about our day. We talk about what's going on in our life. We talk about plans. We talk about dreams. We talk about struggles. We laugh. We share stories with each other. It's a good time around the dinner table most of the time. Sometimes they're stressed too. But family time is very important. And God is calling us right now because for many of us, we're at home to be with our family. But what about those family members we haven't spoken to, who've hurt us, or we haven't connected with in years? Maybe they need us right now. Maybe they need us to connect with them. Jesus is connecting with his Father in prayer and with others. And that's what we can do right now. We connect with God and others with the tools that we do have. Jesus prayed and he checked in with the others 3 times. Here's one other tip I want to give you is pray some specific prayers right now. And if you use a prayer journal, fantastic, keep doing that. If you're not, I would really highly recommend using a prayer journal. I love this technique. I have several journals. I have one here at the office. I have one at the house, and I keep one in the car. And a lot of times I journal my prayers. I write out my prayers to God. Now, if this is something new or just praying specific prayers is new to you, would you reach out to me this week? Because I have a resource about having a specific prayer life, having a vibrant prayer life. It's 6 lessons and it's all online, and so you can watch it. And I'd love to get that resource to you. But during this time of extreme stress and pressure in your life, reach out to others, reach out to God. Here's the final point, and that is moving forward in faith. Moving forward in faith. Verse 42, Jesus says, "Up, let's be going." He did not allow. He didn't say, "You know what? I'm so stressed right now, I can't move." He moved forward in faith. He moved forward in what he had to do. He prayed, he connected, he got the fuel he needed for his soul for the next step of this journey, this walk to Calvary. And he took the next step forward. Up, let's go. And even in a crisis, you can take your next step. I don't know what it is, but you have a next step. You have a next positive movement forward. There's something that God is calling you to do today. What's God saying at your heart level? What is God asking you to do to move in a positive direction? For me, this week, we wanted to be there in Hagerstown with you. We wanted to be going to Washington, D.C. and Greensboro and Williamsport. We wanted to do a college trip this week, and all those things are gone now for us. But we're still going to move forward. There's a list of pastors I'm going to call this week and encourage them. I'm going to continue to meet with my small group virtually. I've applied for a part-time job, DoorDash. I'm going to deliver meals to people. I'm going to lead my family. with excellence. I'm going to write out a plan on how I'm going to do it this week, because a failure to plan is a plan to fail. What is your next step of faith? Who are you going to reach out today? How are you going to lead your family with confidence? Let me tell you, you can do it with confidence and with determination when you reach out to God, when you reach out to others, when you get your tank filled, and then you step out in faith. In closing, let me give you 3 quick skills to learn. You got to learn how to share at a deep level your emotions, your struggles with God and with others. If you've never done that before, I have a tool. It's called, it's kind of silly, it's called an emotion wheel. And it's basically this chart that has about 100 words on it of emotional feelings that you might be feeling. I can't stress this enough. To be able to share with another person who's safe, who's healthy, what you're feeling, there's actual scientific proof that it brings anxiety level down, and it moves you into a place where you can start making positive life action. But you can't make those positive steps if you don't know what you're feeling. God gave us emotions. He gave us sadness. He gave us anger. He gave us depression. He gave us fear. And what they are warning lights on the dashboard for us to be able to say, whoa, hold on a second. Something's wrong in my life. What is wrong in my life? Assess the situation, just like in CPR, and then move forward in a positive direction. But if you don't know how you're feeling, you're not checking in with other healthy people and with God, you can't do it. Jesus is doing this. My soul is crushed. Those are his emotions he's talking about. My soul is crushed. And he talks to his apostles about that. He talks to God about that. And if you've never done that, that's a skill that you got to learn to get to where you need to go. Number 2, continue to develop and cultivate deep relationships. The sad thing is some of you have been living in isolation for years. Yeah, you come to church, but you don't have deep relationships. You've lost track of some of those family members. You've lost track of some of those old friends. And you might not even have good relationships with your neighbors. Well, one thing I do know you have right now is time. So this week, make some phone calls. God says in James chapter 4 to humble yourself before God, even before men. If there's things in relationships you need to own, if you need to apologize for something, do that this week. And then connect at a deep level and start developing deeper relationships. It's going to be tougher today. That's the reality. But you got to do it. Now, if you have been doing deep relationships, continue to do it in this new way of doing life for this season. Finally, take steps of faith. Learn to take steps of faith. I don't know what it is for you. I have a feeling, though, that God, in his wisdom, has given you something to do. Maybe it's something he's been giving you to do for years and you've been putting it off. But it's time to take that step of faith. Listen, if you're having some confusion on this, I am a life coach. And I would love to help you. You can reach out to me at any time. We can meet virtually, and I'd love to help you understand what God is calling you to do. And that's what I love about life coaching. You see, you're the expert on your life. You know what works for you, but sometimes there's a fear that's keeping you back. So I have no agenda with any of my clients. I just want to help you take that next step of faith that will get you to where God wants you to go. Can I pray with you? Father, thank you for this passage in Mark. So we walk to Calvary, and the next week we're going to look at the next passage. And you have something for us. You have a next step of faith to do. But in spite of the great pressure and anxiety, we need you in our life, and we need others in our life. So I pray that we would learn how to take those steps of faith, how to share our deep emotions, and how to connect at a deep level with others in spite of the restrictions during this virus. Lord, you love us, and we love you. And I pray we would continue to move forward and keep your Son, Jesus Christ, who is the author and the perfecter of our faith, in our view. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless. We'll see you next week.